Okay, so thank you very much. So early on this year, in January and February, we decided to conduct a survey to try to get a picture of how different universities are adapting to the challenges of AI. As Denise said, it felt like most academics were dealing with this on their own. They weren't really collaborating and talking to others. So it was important to get a good picture of how things happen. So now I need to get my presentation on. Okay. So you can access the full slideshow using that QR code. The QR code is going to be in every slide. I'm under strict instructions to speak for no longer than 5 minutes, so it has to be a very high-level presentation. I'm just going to show some highlighted results here. So we asked 9 questions in this survey. It was quite a short survey, and it was divided in these themes. Obviously, there's the initial questions about the context of the institution, a question about policy and governance, and a couple of questions about assessment, adaptation, and practice, academic integrity. It was raised already before, so this is obviously a very important topic. And there was also a question about equity and inclusivity. So the next 4 slides or so, I'm going to show you some of the results that we found, which I found particularly interesting. So we had information about UK academics and non-UK academics. This is an anonymous survey, so we couldn't follow up and know exactly where these academics come from, but I believe most of the non-UK academics are from the US, given how this was distributed. And you can see immediately a big difference between UK and non-UK institutions. So the bar in green shows the response to the question, do you know what your institutional policy on generative AI? And you can clearly see that UK academics seem to be better informed than those in non-UK universities about what the institutional policy is. And a lot of institutions in the UK now have a institutional-wide policy about AI, a RAG type, a red, amber, green kind of policy that seems to basically explain the rules of the game. The sample is 74 academics from UK institutions, 29 academics from non-UK institutions, so it is a good enough sample, I think, to tell us something.
Can you just say briefly how you recruited people?
Well, we basically bombarded bombarded academics in all sorts of ways. We used LinkedIn, we used our personal connections, we used CTaLE, we used the Economics Network and the Royal Economic Society. So we really tried for many weeks to try and get as many responses as we could. It's still interesting to me that a significant number of academics did not know or reported not having university policy on GenAI. Again, this was back in January, February. It's possibly this has changed, but it's still a significant number, even in the UK, that applies to. One of the questions was to try and understand how the university views GenAI. And as you can see, the biggest category, and I'm going to try and change this into percentages because it's easier, is are universities that allow the use of GenAI but does not encourage. So it's just like trying to deal with it, but it's still a little bit scared. 18% allows and encourage students to use AI in their assessment. And we still have 16% that tries to prohibit GenAI, which is something, as we heard earlier, is a bit peculiar, at least. There's also 13% that it's up to the instructor to decide. So the instructor decides if GenAI is allowed or not in the module. So there's some, and again, I would say a significant number that I don't know or where the policy is ambiguous. Okay, so lots of variation in the sector. There's clearly not a policy, a sector-wide policy that everyone agrees. There seems to be some universities ahead of others in terms of allowing GenAI in assessments. Now, we asked also a question about how assessments have changed, and we kind of grouped this in terms of main themes. This was an open-ended question, so just try to get the main messages. A slightly greater proportion of non-UK academics reporting designing assessments around AI weaknesses. This includes many varied topics, from moving to in-person exams, to introducing presentations and vivas, to referring questions to the local context, to very up-to-date kind of issues that are occurring in the economy, and also to specific content that was covered in the lectures. Okay, so there's a big group of academics that seems to be adjusting assessment in that way. About 20% of UK academics reported a return to in-person, or at least more authentic assessments. This proportion might have increased, but from what we heard in UCL, policy now is actually something that is university policy, that you have to have some, at least 50% of in-person exams, and I think other universities are following suit. And so the largest change in both types of institutions seems to be design assessments that are more AI-proof. Okay, instead of integrating AI in the assessment, it's still an attempt to prevent students from using AI in a really effective way. Naturally, when we talk about GenAI today, we have to think about plagiarism. It's something that matters to lots of us. Again, when we see the difference between UK and non-UK, there clearly are differences here. UK universities, a far greater proportion of academics are not allowed to use plagiarism detection tools to detect the use of GenAI. This is followed clear evidence that web-based detection tools or using AI to detect AI leads to very high numbers of false positives and false negatives. As it was mentioned earlier, it's really not very good at ensuring that we can catch misconduct. And there's still a high proportion of academics in both UK and non-UK that allows academics to use AI plagiarism tools. And I think in these institutions there's this illusion that we can catch students if they use AI, and we can maintain academic integrity that way, but this is really, really problematic, as we heard earlier as well. So for academics that said yes to this question, that reported using web-based or GenAI tools, academics were asked, so in that case, which tools do you use? And again, you can see a difference between UK and non-UK academics. A greater proportion of non-UK universities use web-based plagiarism tools, including Turnitin, as we were mentioning, but in the US there was reference to proctoring tools as well that tries to limit the academic misconduct that way. A greater proportion of UK universities seem to have moved for live presentations, oral presentations, or vivas when plagiarism is suspected. So this is a post-assessment reaction. So we bring students in and have a chat to them to detect that. And there's a massive other category in both UK and non-UK, and this includes a wide variety of actions. From academics saying they do not know if they're allowed to use or not, so they're not familiar with the policy, from academics to say they can use their own judgment to decide whether a student has cheated or not, and use their judgment to punish students in that way, which is very strange. Or that specific evidence is needed to prove academic misconduct, like when AI hallucinates and creates fake references, which is something which is well known to exist. So very quick, very high level summary of the main results. As I said, the QR code leads you to a more extended presentation, which includes quotes from participants. So I invite you to take part. Really welcome your feedback, your ideas, your comments on this, because this is still work in progress. And as Denise said, we are going to be working on writing a report in the next few weeks. So your feedback will be very welcome. So thank you. I'll stop here.